Hey everybody, this is India with Fashion Home Life by Eve. Let's go ahead and get into our topic, which you've already seen the thumbnail on what we're getting into. I am going to give you a quick backstory on me, just so you know where my perspective is coming from. And then I'll throw out three scenarios and then come back at the end to explain why, with any of these scenarios, it is not appropriate for anyone to ask another person unless they bring this topic up. It is not appropriate in small talk or family talk to ask people about children in a question of, do you have kids, or why don't you have kids, why don't you want kids, or when are you going to have kids. Any of those, in any of those frames, it's not appropriate to ask a person, like I said, unless they bring that topic up themselves, especially when they're strangers. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get into it. For the record, I am coming from the perspective of a person I'm in my early 40s. My husband and I have been married for almost 20 years. When we first met, there were two things I told him, and one of those things, when even before we started even being boyfriend and girlfriend, we were still just getting to know each other. And I told him, I am on the fence about children. I don't know exactly what words I used, but I definitely know that I made it clear that I'm not sure that I'm going to want kids when I get older. And even though I'm not sure at this stage, I'm likely not going to change my mind. I definitely just I'm in my when I met him I was 19. Yeah. I was 19 going on 20. I did want to leave a window, not a window of hope, a little bit of room, but based off of the way that I had been feeling even as a teenager, I just was not sure whether that pathway was going to be something that I wanted to go down. Okay, so let's get into it. So the scenarios. And the reason I'm talking about this now is because we do see a lot more conversation about this. We hear a lot more, see a lot more articles, a lot more videos or posts where people are talking about and very open and honest about both sides of the spectrum. They have kids, they don't have kids, and you have groups of people who are okay with the choices that they made, and then you have people in the middle that maybe sometimes you're not okay with that choice that you made. And for me, having been a couple, which technically, since we don't have kids, we're not considered a family, we're considered a couple. But having 20 something years of people asking judgmental questions, it gets aggravating. And that's why I wanted to do this video. So anyway, so for the four scenarios that I could think of, as far as like a person being in a couple situation, a partnership, or being a couple, then you have the first scenario where you have a couple without kids. I'm sorry. You have a couple without kids and can't afford them, or physically are unable to have children. You also have a scenario this applies to where you have a couple that can't agree on when to have children. And then you have a couple trying, but they are unsuccessful at having kids. And then you have a couple that I would fit under, which is a couple or a partnership without kids and don't want any. And anytime, let's go from the we call it small talk perspective. You're just having a conversation with somebody that you recently met, and the topic of children comes up. First off, there's so many other things to talk about with a person: their favorite color, where's their favorite place they like to travel, when is their next trip, what do they like to do in their free time, what are their hobbies. So many other things to ask a person about other than the default of, what do you do for a living, and do you have kids. Not saying that those are the first two things that are asked, but they're amongst the kind of first set of questions that are asked in a conversation over the course of maybe 30 minutes or an hour where you're talking to people. And I it gets on my nerves, and it really got on my nerves when I was younger, because first off, what you do and whether you're willing to procreate and bring more people into the world are does not tell you who they are as a person, and that's really what you should be focusing on. But for a small talk perspective, you don't know this person very well. In all of those scenarios that I brought up, it forces that person to either divulge a little bit or a lot of information about themselves personally, health wise, finance wise, or just their mindset wise, or whatever's going on with their situation around the decision to have or not to have kids, that is absolutely none of your business. It forces that person or persons that you're talking to figure out a way to respectfully answer your question, but not divulge everything about the situation. In any of these situations, when I talk about, especially when I talk about maybe there's a person in a partnership, and whether their partner is present or not, if it's a financial situation or health situation, which is why they don't have children yet, it's none of your business to know that they can't afford kids because they have student loans they have to pay back, or and I equate it to the same thing of when you first talk to a person, would you ask them, do they live in a house or an apartment? And why are they still renting if they live in a house, in an apartment? It's the same thing. Just like those are kind of, why do you need to know that? That's none of your business. Same thing with whether I have children or not. That should not You should not find that as a connection point with somebody. I think if it comes up naturally, that's different. That person brings it up, but I just always got aggravated with people who would ask, "Do you have kids?" And when I say, "Well, no, I don't want kids," and then they try to say, I'll say like, "Oh no, I don't have kids," and then the next question would be a follow up related to children. Do you want children? And then you get kind of those judgmental responses. Even if you talk about a couple who or partners that do want children, but want, like, they're at different stages of when to have them. Like one wants to wait a couple of years, one's ready to have them now. That a lot of times does cause a rift in a relationship, and it's a difficult conversation to have, especially when one's ready and one is not. It's a big conversation to have and figure out. And you as an outsider just casually asking a small talk question, you are asking a loaded question that also brings to the forefront a difficult topic that's between the two people involved and has nothing to do with you. And then if I go to the other spectrum of, it's not small talk, right? It's more your family member or a friend, and you know more about that person. Why are you adding more pressure to the situation by asking, when are you going to have kids? It still brings up those same questions or same topics of health wise, finance wise, personally wise, why they need to figure that out without you jumping in there asking your questions. And a lot of times those do come with judgment. I have had that so many times where people will ask me, like I said, do you have kids? I say no. Do you want kids? I say no. Oh, well, you'll change your mind. Or, why do I have to change my mind? Like, this is an abnormal thing for me to say. Like I said, there are so many other things that you can ask a person about if you're just now getting to know them, or if you already know them. There's a deeper level of questions you can ask that person that have nothing to do with heavy topics around, when are you going to get married? When, like, when are you going to settle down? When are you going to have children? Those are just questions that just in no way need to be asked, because that brings on a lot of pressure, a lot of angst, a lot of aggravation, and, like I said, a lot of judgment for various reasons. Hopefully that is helpful, but I really just wanted to drive home, like, that just should not be a question people ask. I remember the last time I got asked this question, I was at a work thing, and it was a casual conversation, but it aggravated me after the fact, because I thought, why are you sitting here trying to convince me that children are a good thing to have? I'm not saying they are not. They are not for me. For me and my reasons, and those are personal things that I have decided on, and it's nothing I need to share with you. It's none of your business. Now, for the record, I'm not saying children are not a bad thing. I think children are great. Children should be born to people who want to fully devote their time and dedication and know what is all involved, and also have the resources to support more children. That's who I think children should be born to. And a lot of times I think more often than not, if you talk to people who decided not to have kids versus people who end up having children, more often than not, those people who decided not to have kids had more of a thought process behind why they decided not to go down that route than people who did. Passing that judgment, because I've gotten that from people, passing that judgment on because you decide to buck the system and do something different is very unfair and it's very frustrating. So I think that's long enough. And thank you for watching. And yeah, just want to get that out because this was a conversation that I actually had recently with some family members, and I was explaining why that's a question that should not be asked. And this was in a room, like we were conversation with people who did not have kids. This was in a conversation with people who did. Like all of us were in the room together. Grandparents, parents, no parents. People dating, people married, people dating, people married, people single. And so, yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.